We spent the last couple of sessions examining scales and modes, and basically what that's done is it's given us the ability to now choose a mode and then choose a key that we want to write in. And once we've defined those two, we know exactly what notes are available to us to write the bass line, the lead, the harmonies, and so forth. But while pitch does play an important role in bass, and it's why we did look at it in the last few sessions, it is important to understand that when you look at the whole picture of groove and bass lines, the movement in pitch contributes very little to the actual groove in dance music. So what I want to do for this session is I want to start by examining groove. Now, the thing is, the first hurdle we're going to reach when we want to talk about bass lines and producing groove in dance records is actually defining what it is. And, well, that's going to be difficult because groove is unquantifiable and it's relative to you, the listener. So, whereas you may have 500,000 people who think that this record has a brilliant groove and it really moves them, you'll get exactly the same amount who disagree. So, what we're going to do for this session and probably the next few sessions is we're going to look at the established practices behind composing bass, and then we'll use those to see how we can write bass lines that will work in dance music. And then, as always, from there, it's up to you to develop upon that to create something that grooves you. This is, after all, about your music. Now, when it comes to writing bass, personally, I prefer to write my bass line and then program a timbre to suit the composition. But that is just the way I like to work. I know a lot of people who like to program a timbre first, and that timbre gives them the idea then that they can then compose a bass line to suit. Both methods, totally viable. So long as the end results are right by your ear, it doesn't really matter how you want to approach it. But I find that if I compose something I like in MIDI, I can generally program a timbre to fit with it. I suppose it's because when I come to sit down at the desk and start writing something, I generally have an idea of what I want to accomplish. So rather than just sit down and play with the gear, I tend to sit down with a focus, if you will. I'm focused on what I want to accomplish on the track. I don't necessarily know the entire track, but I know generally how the bass line should be, whether it should be fast or slow. I know the drums should sound, and I've got a general idea of where I'm going to take the track. Now, I'm not saying that's how you should work, because it isn't. It's just, personally, I find if I sit down without this focal point to work towards, I always end up going all over the place, never end up with anything very useful, and I just find I've wasted my time. But as I say, it's up to you. You've got to develop a way that you feel comfortable with, because it's only when you feel comfortable that you'll start coming up with good music. Now, I'm just saying all that because what we're going to do here is we're going to basically start with MIDI and use the theory to build a typical bass line, and then what we're going to do in later sessions as we move along, we're going to build a timbre to complete and then complement the groove and make it all work together. So while we're working in MIDI now, the groove may not be apparent. When we start to approach programming and effects in later sessions, it will start to groove along, or at least I hope it does anyway. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter, because I've spiked each DVD with an E, so you're going to be dancing around to it whether it works or not. I'm joking saying that. Now, what I've done is I've already laid down the drums, which I've got on a hidden track there. You see claps, hats, 2 shakers, conga, kick, snare. Basically, I've programmed them down in MIDI, applied the effects and process, and then all I've done is I've bounced them down as audio. Now, if you watch Fundamental 1, you'll already have a good idea of how to program a drum rhythm, and if you don't, I would strongly recommend getting hold of Fundamental, since the bass and the drums work together to produce that groove. The relationship is absolutely paramount between these two to a working dance record, and therefore it's obvious that it's going to be imperative that your drum loop is working before you even start thinking about programming a bass. The bottom end of a dance record is all about the interaction of the drums and the bass. in timing, values, pitch, timbre. So you must try and get your drum loop as complete and polished as possible before you even start to look at your bass construction. You've got to think, if you've only got half a drum loop that isn't even programmed properly, how can you feel the drums and feel the rhythm and program a bass to fit with that? If you don't even know how the drums are going to sound, how can you possibly know how the bass is going to fit in there or sound? And remember, you've got to key your bass to your kick. So get the drums down first, get them as completed as you possibly can, and then move on to the bass. So what I'll do, I'll just play back a bit of these drums here so you can have a listen. These are what I've programmed so far. I'll just hide them again now so we can just concentrate here on the bass. Now, the first consideration we've got to take into account when we want to write a bass line is that of groove. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's vitally important that you understand that groove in dance music is very, very rarely derived from pitch. Pitch is important. It's the reason we looked at the earlier sessions, and we will look at that again in later sessions. But when you're writing dance music, it's the timing and the values are much more important. It's why there's literally thousands of dance records out there with a great bottom end that really grooves along. And if you listen to it closely, well, it never actually changes in pitch. What I'll do actually, I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what I mean by that. What I'll do is I'll just knock in. I've got a basic bass patch here on. Oh, there we go. It's the Synchrosoft keys. A basic bass patch there. It's sub boom bass. So what I'm going to do is I'll just knock in some notes. I'll just knock them out evenly for now. And let's all listen back to that. Well, listening back to that, it sounds shit. It's not going to get anybody up on the dance floor, that. So what we'll do is we'll add some pitch movement to this. Now, we've started at C there, so we can say, well, working in C major for the moment. So what I'll do is just move some notes around. I'll put one there. As long as we stay within in the key of C, in the notes of C. One there, and I don't know, put one there. It's just random for the moment. Let's play that back. Well, he sounds better, but he still sounds pretty crap. But the point of that was basically to say, whilst pitch can make bass that little more interesting, it hasn't really added anything to the groove of the music. So when we want to get groove down in music, we need to look beyond pitch, and what we need to do is we need to consider the timing of the notes and the value of the notes. So what we'll do is we'll put that into practice now and see if we can make a better groove. Now, unless you happen to be a musical genius, I certainly don't recommend stamping notes in a piano roll editor with a pencil. You have to understand that groove is something inside you. It's an inner rhythm, and I seriously don't think you can express that by stamping it in with a pencil. What you need to do instead is connect a controller keyboard to your sequencer, start recording the MIDI, and then listen to the drums. Now, I can't stress that word enough. I've stressed it numerous times in our previous DVDs about listening. I find too many aspiring producers hear the music, but they don't listen to the music. You have to listen to what you have so far. As I've said, groove is generated by a combination of the drums and the bass working together. So what you have to do is you have to listen to the drums and try to feel the groove, the bass groove in that drum rhythm. Now, to do that, I find it's best to put headphones on. I'll close my eyes and I'll just listen to it. I'll tend to listen for around 2 or 3 minutes, just trying to see if I can hear a groove in between the drums. And it's always difficult to describe without sounding like I need mental help, but I try and fall into the sound of the drums. I let them surround me and then try to feel their rhythms and their interactions. And once I feel that, I can start to hear a groove in there. Now, if you do the same, if you're not already wearing headphones, put some on. Turn up the volume and just listen. Try not to think about producing bass or the timbre or how you're going to work on it. Just try to hear a rhythm. Let the drums take you where they want, and you'll start to hear bass lines in there, or at least a rhythm of a bass line. Now, as I've touched upon, pitch, absolutely important. Forget about pitch. It's the timing and the values of the notes. That's the length of the notes that are important to hear. So all you need to do is tap in a rhythm you can hear just at one note. It doesn't matter where you tap it in. Now, we all have groove. We've been fed on it from birth by literally thousands of records. So when you're listening back to these drums now, listen to them. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all those notes because they're crap. I'll delete that. I'll just turn that off. Now, I'm on my MacBook today due to the studio desk being serviced, so you're going to have to forgive me here. I'm going to have to punch in a rhythm on this computer keyboard, so sorry about that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play back these drums. I'm going to listen to the rhythm, fall into the rhythm, then I'm going to start tapping in a bass line that I think would suit. And I'll probably tap in a few rhythms, so just bear with me. So do the same, just listen back to it and see if you can hear a rhythm developing. What I'm going to have to do is just unhide these. Let's move that out of the way. What I'll do is... Oops. I'll just loop those. There we go, and they'll loop forever now. And, right, let's listen back and see if we can come up with a groove. I spent the last 10 minutes or so there just tapping out a few different rhythms and basically getting some ideas down, and then I went and had a coffee. I do think it's important that you give yourself that break so when you do come back you can make that clean judgment. Now, one thing I must stress here is that when you come back and listen to it, your first impressions are usually the right ones. So this is the one that grabbed me first, this rhythm here that I've got in. So I've cut that out. And I've brought it back to the beginning here. I'll just let you have a quick listen to that. Now, it's all a bit scruffy there, so the first thing I need to do is just tidy up these notes a little. I'll just get them into a bit of time now. Now, the only thing I want to adjust here, I've got to point this out, is the timing of them. As you saw, some are occurring that little bit too late. For example, I'd want that to occur on the beat. Oops. I want that to occur on the beat there, and pretty much try and keep them on the beat. Now, on the subject of timing, you'll generally find that if you place bass notes in the same position as the kick or the hats, as like there, that's in the same position as the kick, as that is, and we'll move that one over to the kick there and move that one back there. When they're on the position of the kick, they tend to produce quite a driving feel to the music, whereas if you go just before the kick, you create a kind of syncopation, like that note there occurring just before and over the kick. That creates a kind of syncopation which can add interest to bass lines. So it is all about timing and the length of the note. So I said we're pretty much on there. I mean, we're hitting the beat there. We're crossing the beat on that second one. So we'll just have a quick listen to that now and see how that sounds. I think what we'll do there is just move these up to actually hear them a little bit better. Well, I mean, personally, I don't think that sounds bad at all. That it's certainly got a groove now. There's a rhythm there, and now listening to that, what I'd do there is I'd probably leave that as is, and then jump onto processing and effecting that to get it to really gel with this bottom end and programming a tone. But I think we do need to talk about introducing pitch and how the theory can help us select which pitches to use. So we're going to have to employ some pitch movement in that, just really for the purpose of example, if nothing else. So I think what we'll do is we'll leave that there now. I've given you an idea of how to get the groove down. So what we'll do is we'll leave that there, and at the next session we'll start to look at introducing different pitches and how to manipulate feelings with different pitches.